book, which was published about 3 years ago now, and it was a bestseller and the top environmental book of the year. It lists all the different solutions that a group of over 200 scientists and environmentalists decided were the best projects, after evaluating many hundreds, to draw down carbon dioxide or prevent it from entering the atmosphere in the first place. And after the book was published, Pachamama Alliance partnered with the Drawdown Project to create workshops to help bring the solutions to communities. So people didn't just read the book and say, nice, but now what do I do? What you do is you come to our workshops and you investigate all the different solutions, you figure out which ones make sense for your community, and you build a community of support through the workshops to help you work on those solutions. My solution happens to be regenerative agriculture, which is a little bit of a challenge since I'm not a farmer or a wholesaler, but in recent months I have found through talking to different organizations like the Organic Consumers Association that there are workshops available now to help me become an advocate for regenerative agriculture. So that's just one thing that can happen after you attend our workshops. I have a list of the different solutions by category or sector, and I just wanted to point out a few things. Surprisingly, the most effective way to draw down carbon dioxide is to manage the Now, there's so many different versions of this chemical compound, but the one that they use in refrigerants, to manage refrigerants, because those chemicals are vastly more potent than carbon dioxide, and there are ways that we can control them. So if you combine food waste and plant-rich diet, however, that would be the #1 solution. If you combine educating girls and family planning, that would be the #1 solution. So there's a whole variety of solutions, and some make a lot of sense for where you live, and others may be interesting but don't. So what I would encourage you to do is take this list, one of these, I'll put them on the chair there, and maybe I can hand them out when I finish talking, and take a card. This card is from Marty Levin, who's one of the Pachamama Alliance coordinators of the workshops, but I have my contact information on the back. So if you're interested in having us bring a project drawdown introduction workshop, either to your meeting or some other organization in your community, that's how you can contact either me or Marty. And that's it for drawdown. I do recommend the book. The website is also a really valuable source of information. It has everything that's in the book and more, and it's a little bit interactive. So they're going to update the book, but they haven't done the revision yet, so the website has more up-to-date information even than the book does. Is somebody timing this?
Ruth, we take questions.
Sure, I can take questions and then I'm going to move to something else. Are there any questions? Sandy?
Related to being able to come out with the Pachamama Alliance enforcement, is there a fee involved?
No, there's no fee. I mean, we accept donations if people want to give them, but no, there's no fee involved.
One is managing refrigerants. Is there anything that we can do, or is that okay?
There is. If you have a very old refrigerator or freezer, chuck it and get a new one because the technology is better. It's much tighter. And when you get rid of a refrigerator or a freezer, you should contact your county or your utility and find out how to dispose of it, because I think most utilities are required to dispose of those for you in an environmentally sustainable way. Air conditioning too, I think.
Where do you live?
Kathy, where do you live? New Jersey. I know in New Jersey, if you have PSE&G, I think you can contact PSE&G and
I'm sorry. Yeah, JCP.
well, they should do the same thing. Any other questions? How much time do I have? I don't want to cut into the other workshops. I had a little exercise in compassionate listening that I was going to do with you, but it takes about 15 minutes, and I may have used up too much of my time already.
Well, there's two hours allocated to this workshop.
Yeah, but we have 3 other speakers. Go for it.
I'll give you 5 in 1 minute.
Okay, all right. So the reason I wanted to do this exercise is that a lot of us have been working really hard on climate change for many years, some of us, and for not so many years others. And then there's some of us who are really just getting hit over the head by the latest reports and information about species and climate change. And we don't often have time to actually talk about it, process it among friendly people who understand what we're going through. So I had this opportunity to do some compassionate listening recently, and I found it was really pretty powerful. The idea is it's kind of like active listening, but the listener doesn't do any acting. The only thing the listener does is look the speaker in the eye. Try not to even approve or disapprove or agree or disagree with body language, just listen. And then when time's up, I'll tell you when time's up, then you ask the speaker one question about something that they said, and they have another minute or so to answer that. And the idea is that we don't often get a chance just to be heard. So we're not validating other than by listening. So you need to break into pairs, and I'll let you choose who you break into a pair with. And the question that you're going to be answering is, how do I feel about climate change right now? And how do I feel about any work that I've been doing in climate change? And I'm not going to go into it any further than that. I could, but I don't want to limit what you talk about. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes once you pair up with somebody. Time is up. Thank you all. Before I hand the microphone over to Liz, I just want to thank all of you for the work that you're doing to protect our planet for future generations. Liz Robinson is going to do the next presentation.
It's a great way to start a presentation, isn't it? It's really nice. I'm Liz Robinson. I live in Philadelphia. I currently direct a tiny little nonprofit called the Philadelphia Solar Energy Association. And before that, I ran a much larger nonprofit for many years called the Energy Coordinating Agency. So my background is in both energy efficiency and solar, principally. And I am now semi-retired. And I was just telling Kathy that when I semi-retired, my pledge to myself was to do everything I can do every day to slow down climate change. And so I've done a lot of personal actions over the years, still working on those. There is always more to do. But I am focused principally on policy now. And so I'm going to take us to a big picture. And all of you, I'm sure, are aware of what the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Is everybody familiar with that? No? Okay. The United Nations has assembled over the last several decades all the world's best climate scientists, and so there are roughly 900 of these wonderful people, and they have been publishing every several years a report on the state of climate. And the most recent report is the first time that they have said within the next X number of years, catastrophe is going to break loose. So the issue with climate, and I think this is something that we're still struggling with in this country, climate change is not linear. The climate will not degrade in a linear fashion. It has cycles. And when carbon dioxide, people use the term carbon dioxide, that means all emissions. The more accurate term would be greenhouse gas emissions. So when emissions reach the level of 450, we can reach a tipping point. And when we hit that tipping point, we won't be able to recover the quality of environment that we had before. There's a level of degradation that will not be reversible. Thank you. So it's not linear, and I think it's very, very important to understand that. So the IPCC report that came out several months ago said that we had 12 years left to get to roughly 50% reduction of carbon emissions. And then by 2050, by the year 2050, we had to get to zero. We had to get to carbon neutrality. The environment had to become neutral. The issue with the emissions is once they are released, they have a very long shelf life. And different emissions have different life expectancies, but carbon dioxide is more than 100 years. So once you release carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it's not like it moves on and makes room for the next molecule. That's not the way it works. It stays there for 100 years before it dissipates. And we have been on a trajectory of increasing emissions as a globe, globally, for quite a long time, really, essentially since the Industrial Revolution. So since we started depending upon carbon for energy, we've been spewing it into the atmosphere with no, reckless abandon is the phrase that comes to mind, So the task at hand is to change our economy from a fossil-based economy to a clean energy economy in the next 10 years. So the most important weapon in this arsenal is energy conservation, energy efficiency, using less energy than we are accustomed to using. So when I arrived, those two little lamps were on. And what kind of a bulb is that?
Bad bulb.
So anyway, I'm such a nerd, so I'm in the habit of shutting things off, right? So I shut them off, So one of the really simple things to do is to reduce consumption and convert your source of energy to 100% clean as quickly as you can. And I am extremely encouraged at the pace at which, not the federal government is, on its own little path at the moment. But states and cities across the country are doing wonderful things. So in our region, we've got a number of leaders. How many of you live in New Jersey? Oh, almost everybody. How many of you live in Florida? Anybody live anywhere else?
Pennsylvania.
Maryland. Oh, cool. And Maryland. Oh, cool.
Delaware and Canada.
Oh, great. And you're in Pennsylvania. All right. So the states in the region are doing pretty darn well. The leader is New York. New York just declared several weeks ago, actually about a month ago, passed a law, state law, committing itself to 100% renewable by 45. I think it's not even 50. I think they said 45. So the same day that the governor announced this, they signed commitments for 13 gigawatts of offshore wind. So in the Atlantic Ocean, right here, this is where the ocean, there is a massive offshore wind resource that is now being tapped. And that resource is the principal new resource that's going to make this possible. Maryland is the leader. Maryland is committed to 50% renewable by 2050. Washington, D.C. is already committed to 50%, but it's going to change to 100%. They are going to up their commitment. Delaware is committed to 40% by 2050. New Jersey is committed now to 50% by 2050. Ohio, unfortunately, is going in the wrong direction. They just weakened their commitment. And Pennsylvania has to, we're only at 8. And we developed this commitment years ago, and it is now coming to the end of its sunsetting. It's coming to the end of its life. So we have to renew it. So one of the challenges that a large group of organizations, including mine, is undertaking is trying to get this to change to 30%. That doesn't sound like a lot, but you all know if you live in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a very conservative state, and it is also, the previous governor, Tom Corbett, liked to say, we are the Saudi Arabia of natural gas, right? So we're the king of fracking on the East Coast. It's very difficult because a lot of the legislators are in the pocket of the fracking industry. It's, just the truth. So it's very difficult, but we believe we can get to 30%. So that's our first effort, yes.
My city of Reading
Yes.
is committed to 100%.
Awesome.
By-
That's awesome, yes.
I have actually two questions, and if I'm, like, this is incorporated somewhere else, just tell me.
Sure.
The first question has to do with the rainforests that are burning.
Yeah, let me cover what I'm going to cover, and we'll come back to that. Jim, could you advance the slide? All right, next slide, please, as they say. Uh-oh. Yes, it is. Got a lot of information on it. The principal resources that are going to get us to these goals are solar and wind. And the wonderful thing about solar energy is that the price of solar energy has plummeted in the last 10 years. I was working on the very first solar program in Pennsylvania 10 years ago. We set this up, and we were desperate to get the cost to $8 a watt installed. I installed solar on my home 2 years ago, and it was $3 a watt installed. And not only that, but the efficiency of the modules has almost doubled, and the longevity, the life expectancy, the warranty of the system has increased. So it's 85% cheaper, it's more efficient, and it lasts longer. So it's mind-boggling to me how much improvement there has been in the technology. And in wind, this offshore wind resource has been under development since the Obama administration. They had to figure out how to actually lease that land, if you will, because the federal government controls all of that land out 3 miles out beyond the shore is federal control, not state control. So the federal government had figured that out, and that started under President Obama, and now those leases have been let. So there are 13 leases that have already been let. So it's a massive amount of clean energy that's going to flow into this region, into New England and the Mid-Atlantic. Yes?
When I was young, like elementary school, and then on, I've always drawn floor plans
Right.
for fun.
Right.
I just like doing that, and I always had a glass house, because I made it passive solar and active solar. I was kind of ahead of my time, anyway. And of course, all my parents would say was that, what, you're gonna be hit by a tree, and that was the enthusiasm they had that. But anyway, what I was gonna say is, we currently live in a house that was surrounded by trees, and we're hoping they will come with it really, really efficient, small.
All right, let me talk about that. This actually, Kathy and I were talking about the same problem, and this is the meeting that Ruth and Kathy belong to. So one of the things that's developing, and you have it already in New Jersey, is a concept called community solar. Community solar is, so the problem that you have of too many trees on your wonderful house, and they have a lot of trees on their wonderful meeting. I have too many trees on my house. So most of us live in homes that we cannot put solar on the roof. Either we don't own the building, we rent, or we've got too many trees, or we don't have the money, frankly. So that is 70% of Americans. The solution that's being developed for that is a concept called community solar. Community solar is simply a very, very large system put in an ideal location, sunny, and instead of owning it, people subscribe to a portion of it to fit your need. So whatever amount of solar you want. The difference between that and buying, Rex or something like that, is that this system will be built close to your location. You could even, as a religious organization, you could put the system on land that you control. I mean, if the Y had excess land, they could do it here. And members can subscribe to it. And it comes with a full net metering that your state has. So it's like having solar on your house without the headache and without any upfront expense. So community solar is already available in New Jersey. It's in a pilot phase, and once the pilot phase is over, it'll go statewide.
Is that the same as the green energy?
No. When you're buying energy, when you're opening your bills and this guy's soliciting you, and you're buying from that person is a supplier. They may not even own the system that they are bidding you to subscribe to. They may be buying from someone else. They're essentially a broker. So they're purchasing energy on the market that comes from, you don't know exactly where it comes from. And to be very honest, unless that chain of authority and purchase is registered with the Green label, you may not really know if it is solar. It's gotten very difficult to guarantee that these suppliers. It's not to say that they're not. I mean, I stayed with a supplier for 14 years, the Energy Co-op in Philly, which is a wonderful organization. But I'm no longer. I am increasingly interested in maximizing the way that we produce more clean energy and ensuring that it is clean. Oh, great. Okay. So I wanted to talk with you just briefly, and I think I'm probably way over time, but okay. I wanted to talk with you about carbon markets. How many of you understand and feel like you know what a carbon market is? Anybody? Carbon market? Okay. A carbon market, as I was saying at the outset, we have been as a society, as a world, using fossil fuel and spewing the carbon into the atmosphere. The atmosphere is not infinite, the ocean is not infinite, and we have been polluting both for 100 years. In order to reduce that pollution rapidly, we need to stop acting like our environment is a toilet, and the cost of carbon is having very damaging impacts. So putting a price on carbon, creating a market for carbon is essential to slowing and correcting the imbalance in the marketplace. So there are many ways to do this. The way that has been developed in our region is something called a Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, RGGI, R-G-G-I. RGGI includes 9 states, all of New England, New York, this is Delaware and Maryland are already in RGGI. And your state, New Jersey, is joining on January 1st. Virginia is probably going to join 6 months later. And what RGGI does is, so the construct here is called cap and trade. So carbon, all carbon emissions are capped. And that cap is a hard cap. You cannot emit more. So your emissions cannot increase. The cap is lowered by 3% every year. So the cap comes down at a very steady pace. If you emit carbon, you must purchase an allowance. And right now, an allowance is for 1 ton of carbon dioxide. And that ton, the cost of carbon in RGGI is $8 a ton. 8. It's way too cheap, to be frank. The real cost of carbon is about $70 a ton. Depends on who you talk to, but it's way higher. But anyway, carbon in the RGGI states is priced very low. The RGGI states, the allowances are generating hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Those revenues are reinvested almost entirely in energy efficiency and renewable energy. So it creates a revenue stream converting bad, dirty energy, carbon, into a revenue stream for investment in clean energy at a huge level. And every state in the RGGI system decides how they want to spend those revenues. So New Jersey was in RGGI until Governor Christie pulled you out, and now your new Governor Murphy has put you back in. So you will start generating, and it's wonderful that you're back in already, to be frank, it's really great. So hundreds of millions of dollars will begin flowing in New Jersey from the carbon industry into clean energy in ways that the state decides are most important. So we're trying to get our state, Pennsylvania, because of all the fracking, we generate, as a state, we generate more carbon than all the RGGI states combined. So this one state is pumping out more carbon than everybody else in RGGI. So it's critical that Pennsylvania gets into RGGI and begins to lower our emissions. So that's the other big policy that we're working on, is getting into RGGI. Should we do advance? Thanks. So I'll just touch on this. There's, in every region of the United States, there is something called an independent system operator. There's a grid. And the grid, so these are all the independent system operators in the country. We are part of the biggest one, PJM. It stands for Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland. And the black bar is polluting sources of energy, and the blue bar is clean energy. So you can see there's a different mix in each of the regions across the country. And what do you think is comprises the black bar in PJM? Pennsylvania, but what is the resource?
I hope it's not coal.
Frack gas. Coal is much more expensive now than gas. Gas is way cheap. So if you look at the pricing of fuel, coal is way expensive now. Nobody wants coal. So it's not coal, we got rid of coal, but we switched from coal to gas, and that's the problem, because gas has massive quantities of methane, and methane as a pollutant is much worse than carbon dioxide, much worse than CO2. So I'm out of time. I got one more slide just to show you. This is just the kind of the same information. Thanks, Jim, so much. But I know that you might feel that you have no direct link to this kind of policy, but I think it's important for all of us to understand that we need to do everything we can to move as quickly as we can to clean energy. And there are, as Ruth started with the drawdown project, there are many ways that we can do that. And every one of them is important, and we should do all of them as quickly as we can. So thank you. Is that a question?
Other questions?
What is the cost difference between oil and natural gas?
Oil is more expensive, natural gas is way cheap. And it's way cheap because it's not even taxed in Pennsylvania. We're the only state in the country that doesn't tax gas. So, we subsidize the oil and gas industry in this country to the tune of $47 billion a year that we're subsidizing nationally. So, it depends, on the market, but if you're talking about heating, you're talking about home heating?
I had converted, we had an oil tank when I bought the house.
Right.
And I converted in Denver.
Okay.
And I converted to natural gas.
Good. It's cleaner.
Yeah, and a high efficiency furnace.
Good, that's very good, very good. That's a good thing to do. So you lowered your carbon footprint by doing that.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I don't have solar and I don't have
Right.
those things.
Right. One of the things that's coming that is beginning to happen is electrification. So as the grid gets cleaner, people will begin electrifying and converting from oil and gas to electricity. So you're seeing this already in transportation. People who have ability, of access to clean energy are moving from an internal combustion engine to an electric vehicle. Anybody own an electric car? An EV? Ruth, yes. Wow. leasing, so you have to really know what you're doing in the leasing arena. So I think owning it is better. That's my humble opinion. Yes. Yeah, Madam Chair.
I was just going to ask, when you're talking about options for energy for a rented apartment versus owning a house, I don't own a house.
Right.
And I have PSE&G.
Right.
Do I have the right to choose a different energy supplier?
I
Can I
believe
that?
you do in New Jersey, yeah. You have
Absolutely.
choice.
I can do that. I
Yeah.
can change that.
Yes, and there are very good suppliers. I bought renewable energy from a supplier in Philly 14 years ago, and I've been 100% renewable for 14 years.
We found that, and then we're able to make that switch.
I'll tell you
Yes.
how, Ben, later.
Yeah, Ruth.
All right.
See me at lunch.
Okay.
Any other questions? Great, thank you.
I had one, sorry.
We introduced
One more.
Paula Kline.
That's okay.
One more question. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'll make it quick. I was just, I know with solar, one of the big issues is battery technology.
Yes.
Is that advancing at the same rate?
Yes. Battery technology, so both sun and wind are intermittent sources of energy. And in order to maximize their value, we have to store the output. And battery storage is accelerating really, really rapidly. Lithium ion is the principal method of storage now, but there are many others that are advancing, and there are many other methods of storage. So I'll tell you one funny one I just read. The current Time magazine, if you see it, is 100% devoted to climate change. It's a fabulous issue. So if you see Time magazine, please pick it up. It's wonderful. And there's a great story in there. So in Denmark, they have too much wind energy at certain times, and they are storing it. And one way that they're storing it is this company is using a crane, an automated crane like a robot, to pick up gigantic blocks and make a gigantic tower out of these blocks. And then when they need the energy, they topple the tower over, and the gravity is using gravity to create the energy. And then he's using all of that energy for the next round. So this is kind of a play on, usually it's pumped storage, so you usually pump water up a hill and then let the water fall down. That's an ancient technology that Native Americans invented, I'm sure. But that very simple ancient technology of using gravity, but he's using a robot to pick up blocks of that.
I wonder if Lego has something to do with that.
Yeah, I'm going to turn this over to Paula.
So I'm Paula Kline, I'm from Westtown Monthly Meeting, and I'm going to talk specifically about narrowing into what we can do at the local community level. And I am from Pennsylvania, and much of the Industrial Revolution started because of Pennsylvania, so it's not a surprise that we have a corrupt state house now that's controlled by oil industries, because we had the first oil well, we had some of the most important coal reserves, and now of course we have natural gas. You can say that the Industrial Revolution was fueled by Pennsylvania or the area's greater Mid-Atlantic's reserves, and for the most part, many of us thought this was a tremendous thing. Can anyone tell me what some of the bad results were from using fossil fuels? I just shout a few out.
Bad air.
Pollution, bad air,
Black lung?
black lung, strip mining, mountaintop removal, destruction of communities, brownfields, water pollution. We could go on. Cancer, thank you. So we could go to the next slide. So these were never healthy industries. For the people working in these industries, despite the national claim that we need to revive these industries, these were never good for workers or families or communities. And Ohio and Pennsylvania, which still have a lot of operating coal plants that have not had any of the newer technology to improve the air, literally are killing thousands and thousands of people every year, to say nothing of the exposure in terms of fracking that we now know about, both from the research done in New York and in Pennsylvania. So the other impact, which no one happened to mention, but no one's ignorant of, is the physical damage done by the impact of changing our weather patterns. This is 2017, 2018 looks as bad, 2019 is not going to look pretty. This costs the country billions of dollars every year. It disrupts people's lives, sometimes permanently, creates trauma, especially in children, and it actually destroys our infrastructure. Next slide, please. However, if you haven't hugged an engineer today, you should. Every day is Hug an Engineer Day because we want to thank them in the last few decades for making the technology that allows us to say definitively, as of today, we could meet all our energy needs with wind, water, and solar. So people say, well, how are you going to do that? It's impossible, it'll take too long, we only have a decade. And I love this is from a presentation by a man who studies economic disruptions. On the left, you have the year 1900 in New York, the famous Easter Parade, and he's circled on it the only, and it might even be electric, but it's a combustion engine, symbolically, a combustion engine vehicle in the parade. And if you'd asked anybody at that parade, so what do you think? Are we going to see any big shift in our horse and buggy trade? No one would have said, yep, just hold your breath, blink an eye, and we'll all be driving those cars. But only 13 years later, same parade, another photo, and there's only one visible horse and buggy. So we can make these rapid, dramatic shifts when the technology is ready, when the market is ready, and when policies are ready to support this. This didn't just happen because all of us said, hey, I want a car. This is because the oil and gas industry and the automobile industry had our leaders in their pocket, even at that time, and they made it possible for the car to become the dominant feature in our culture. How can it happen? I'm not going to repeat what Liz said, but if that's where we were in 2000, this is where we need to be. The big increase is obviously in the production of renewable, but the other is what she said, efficiency, end-use efficiency. But it also means miraculously, if we stop extracting, producing, transporting, selling fossil fuels by itself, that will reduce, and especially the shift from combustion engines to electric vehicles, that by itself will reduce our use so dramatically that it puts 100% in our reach. So who's already transitioning? The US military has long since named climate change as our most potent threat, and I know that every branch of the US military has made commitments to transitioning to 100% where they can. The business community, this is a poster from IKEA that made the commitment some years ago to 100%. They had to close 9 stores during Hurricane Sandy. That's what it cost them. There's no business that wants to go back to that disaster slide and have that happen year after year. These are companies that have all made commitments to 100 through an organization called Renewable Energy 100, which is a business consortium. I'm sure there's some greenwashing in there, but by and large, this is an important commitment. This is a 30-second video. I don't know if we have sound. Do you have sound if you play that video? Some companies are doing it very quietly and privately, and some are making a big splash. And if we can watch, we'll watch a 30-second splash. Do we have sound? And if not, it's not worth it. Not worth it. If we can, we'll watch it later. And for those of you who are sports fans, the sports industry gets this, that fans care, and the Eagles are a good example of a sports industry that's made a commitment to 100% renewable. Next slide, please. The transition is happening, the tide is turning in terms of investment. Again, Liz lifted this up globally. New investment in clean energy increased $333 billion. These are the choices investors are now making. And then what can we do locally? And that's my message, is that the military is doing it, businesses are doing it, now local governments need to do it. I think we can all write off the national policies for quite a while, but we have control over our own energy policy would be a radically democratic choice to make at this point. So Ready for 100 is an initiative through the Sierra Club, and it's a commitment that each local governing body makes, and it could be a school system, a water authority, or your local government, makes a commitment to transition their electricity by 2035 to 100% renewable, and for all their purposes, which means for the heating and cooling and transportation, by 2050. Why? Because of what Ruth and Liz said. We have a carbon cliff we do not want to go over. The Economist, which is a pretty conservative British journal, said now, how many years ago, that 100 years from now, looking back, the only question that will appear important about the historical moment in which we now live is the question of whether or not we did anything to arrest climate change. Next slide. So these are the urban communities across the globe that have made a decision to be able to look their grandchildren in the eye and say what they did. It's emerged as a local grassroots movement in some cases, and in others from the national government making it possible for those cities to do those changes. I'm going to give you 3 quick examples. This is my favorite. Greensburg, Kansas was flattened within something like a minute and a half from a tornado. When they picked themselves up off the ground and gathered in a tent, they looked each other in the eye and said, we're not going to do this again. We're going to build back green. And they made a commitment to be 100% green. And they have risen in the prairie to become one of the best models in the country. Other cities like Salt Lake have terrible air quality just because of their geography. And they were seeing rising prices in healthcare costs, but also just caring about their citizens' health from the pollution. So they made a commitment to renewable energy, largely driven for health reasons. And then Florida. Do we need to ask why Florida would want to go 100% renewable? But many cities are already seeing regular flooding just from high tides. They don't even have to wait for a hurricane. So in Pennsylvania, in the area I live, there's a 5-county area around Philadelphia. I live in Chester County. We have 9 townships that have passed resolutions. In Montgomery, I think it's 10. With more interested in Delaware County, there are already several. Next slide, please. And the process is to go to your township or your borough or your city, wherever you live, and craft a draft resolution that meets certain criteria. You try to get as much popular input as you can so that people come from the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the local churches, the local health representatives, and you ask for a discussion about 100% renewable. We have been shocked that most of these are unanimous votes, and occasionally if they're not, it's usually only one person objecting. And then the next step is to do it. Passing a resolution is nice, but if it sits on the shelf, it doesn't mean anything. So what it means in practice is that each community creates a plan, and the first is to do what Liz said, reduce your demand. What can you do to be efficient? What can the township do to be a model? But then how can you help the businesses, schools, and residents in your community do that? The second thing is you do an analysis. What could we produce here, either as a community solar project? Do we have land available to us that we could broker with an installer to put in? Or how many roofs, how many schools, how many businesses could actually produce? And then think about what would you do collectively to provide the funding to do that. And then what you can't produce, you can purchase offsets. That's what many communities are doing. But there are basically 4 strategies. I want to leave you with this. There are 4 strategies to get us there. We saw that chart that showed the increase in renewables, but it's a little more complex than that. The first thing is we have to electrify everything so that as we clean the grid, everything we're using is clean energy. So that means my gas stove, it's got to go. When my furnace died, I had natural gas, I put in an electric heat pump. When your car dies, you buy an electric car. It's not going to happen all at once, but if we just did a replacement policy for ourselves and our communities, it would be happening much faster than we expect. So we clean the grid, that's all the renewables. We electrify our homes. We start the energy efficiency, obviously first, I've said it in the wrong order, comes first. And then the last thing is we do have to sequester carbon. This can't happen. None of the UN assessments actually work without carbon sequestration. And right now we don't have the technology for that. So what that really means for us at a local level is planting trees. We have to plant massive numbers of trees in our open spaces that we are now keeping for natural beauty. We need to make them forested natural beauty. So that's another piece of the policy. I'm going to skip this, but we have a lot of information to provide municipalities. You can just click and it will fill in the blank. But these are specific tools that we have all across the country that have been tested in a number of cities. 6 of the cities that make commitments already have 100% renewable electricity. There are now 6 states. New York was mentioned. Anybody guess what the first state was? It's a good guess.
Hawaii.
Hawaii, again. Why would Hawaii care? 1.5 to stay alive. The island nations are most at risk. So we have California, the Northwest, Nevada, New Mexico, New York, Puerto Rico, Washington, D.C., I'm probably forgetting somebody else. Wouldn't it be great if New Jersey was next?
Yes, it would.
Yes. Okay, next slide. So my point here is just there are roadmaps for individuals, there are roadmaps for governments and municipalities in general, and theirs is mostly a policy level. This is what is included in any resolution. You make a commitment, as I said earlier, to electricity by a certain date, all other purposes by a second date. You say you're going to do a plan, and you do a plan by setting a date by when the plan is due. You include the local community. This is not meant to be PGM making all the decisions for us. This is supposed to be us making the decisions because we care about each other and our neighbors. You call on your state to do something because it'll move faster when there are state policies that facilitate this. And don't do it alone. In my county, there are 70 small townships. Can you imagine if we all have to figure this out by ourselves, or the cost that we'll each have to assume if we do that? So multi-municipal plans make the most sense. So I want to end with this. One of our strategies is to show people it's happening now. So on October 19th, we're having a clean energy tour in 4 parts of our county. Even though you don't live here with us, come visit. We have the largest producing solar system in Pennsylvania. It's a Quaker-owned mushroom farm. This is the 5th generation mushroom farm, the oldest mushroom farm in the country. We have other Quakers participating, but the point is we're trying to demonstrate businesses, homes, municipal buildings, houses of worship, nonprofits, they're all already doing this. This isn't rocket science anymore. So this idea that you can go visit, ask questions, see what's possible, we're hoping will influence our policymakers as well. So the expression has already been shared today. I think in our private conversations with the person we've had an opportunity and privilege to speak to first. But this is the legacy we want to leave our children. Let's not leave this to our kids. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Any questions before I pass the microphone on? Yes?
Not a question, but a comment. I've been pleased to see that some of the hotels and motels are using solar to cover their parking lots. And I think that more schools or any place where there are parking lots, especially in the Northeast, you can save having to plow your parking lot and have by having a solar cover on it. That's all.
That's an excellent point. We have a lot of parking lots.
I just wanted to add something that I think one of the barriers are the myths about cost, and the reality is that cost has completely changed in the last few years. Coal used to be the cheapest resource. Now it's very expensive. And nuclear energy, is really pretty much off the table. But solar and wind are cost competitive with natural gas in every state. And in many states, they are the cheapest resource. So in Hawaii, solar is the cheapest resource. Solar and wind are the cheapest resources. So there's no barrier anymore. So it's just a matter of will.
Any other questions? I'm just going to commend to you.
I was just wondering, when you said that solar and wind were the cheapest, were on par with, I believe it was natural gas.
Yes.
Is that including government carbon credits or something, or is that?
Yeah.
Because those can be taken away, obviously.
Right. That is regardless of subsidy. So if the federal government were to stop subsidizing natural gas, which it currently does, solar and wind would be less expensive. The subsidies to solar and wind are minuscule. They're very tiny compared to the subsidy to the fossil industry. And if you're a geek like me, you'll love going to NRDC has a new tool on their website, and you can model yourself. You can play with this tool. So take a look at that. It's really quite wonderful.
I am, like I said, I have been trying to do renewable energy since my childhood. And one thing I said, why don't people push for a law that says all new buildings must be passive solar, like facing the right way with the windows on the correct side? Because if they did that, that would make a huge difference right there. The other thing I have a question about is, I'm not familiar with exactly what natural gas is, and does that have any same problem with the fracturing, or how do they get it out, or what is that exactly?
So that's a longer question, and I'm going to offer to share something with you later, since I know we want to move on to the next person, but it's a worthy question that we should all understand, because it's putting all our lives at risk. So thank you for asking that, and let's discuss that afterwards. I just want to say, if you live somewhere, does everyone live somewhere? You have a local government. Look up Ready for 100 Sierra Club. I don't know if there's an organizer here, but you could be the first. And there's a great process to give you orientations, national materials, leadership support. We're next door. We can talk to you and come tell you about our success stories. I can just kind of casually put up that long list, but that's 3 years of effort to get all those cities. And on the national map, we have more in the southeast corner of Pennsylvania than anywhere else in the country. And that's because we know what we're facing in Pennsylvania is an uphill battle. So join us, New Jersey, please join us. Consider starting a Ready for 100 campaign in your area. So thanks, I'm going to turn it over to Pamela.
I just wanted to say a word about natural gas, because I just got the option to get renewable natural gas in my system. So it occurs in many ways. So there's the frack gas that's deep underground, but there's also the gas that comes out of landfills, and there's ways of capturing natural gas that doesn't require drilling. So it's a big topic, but it's possible to look for natural gas that has a better story than the frack gas. Quick answer. So my name is Paula Haynes. I'm a member of Central Philadelphia Monthly Meeting, and I want to talk a little bit about all the other parts of eco-justice that we haven't talked about. It's been almost entirely around ecology, environment, climate, but when we thought about eco, we thought about ecology and economics, and we thought about justice. So I want to stretch much wider now, and I also want to look at some of our Quaker roots in thinking about this. I'm not used to a mic. But I wanted to start with John Woolman. John Woolman is a New Jersey guy, a guy who thought about economics right from where he was sitting. So, John Woolman's, he advises us to dig deep, carefully cast forth the loose matter, and get down to the rock, the sure foundation, and there hearken to the divine voice, which gives a clear and certain sound. And I kind of, in my mind, I think about that as listening for what rings true, digging deep and listening for what rings true. And my journey around that process of looking for roots and listening for what rings true has kept me coming back to the issue of economics. That a lot of the things we're facing in the climate crisis have economic roots. A lot of the solutions have to require shifts in the way we organize our economy. And as I've been thinking more recently, digging deep into issues around economics, I keep coming to the finances and the role that our financial system plays in making these whole systems run. So I've been thinking a lot about money over the last several years, and I want to talk a little bit about economics and finance and money with the environment and climate kind of within that larger picture. So a recent fruit of that has been this little book, Money and Soul, which I wanted to commend to your attention. And I want to read, it's a book that I kind of spent several years in the making, and it's framed around a series of, it's meditations around our Quaker testimonies. Money, economics, Quaker testimonies, and then how do we respond? How do we respond in our personal lives, in our communities, and in our relationship to national policy? So I wanted to read just a little bit from the book. I start with integrity. I think integrity is really the big one. So what rings true in the messages we get about ourselves as actors in our economic system? Much of it has a distinctly tinny sound. We need more stuff. Greed is good for us. Selfishness defines our essential nature and is the building block of a healthy economy. Advertisers help us secure products that will make us happy. Well-being is more accurately measured in financial terms. Competition brings out the best in us. So going for the roots, where can we hear the ring of truth in ideas about what the economy is for? Is it for steadily increasing the power of the wealthiest? Maximizing profits by eliminating jobs that people need? Convincing us we need things we're better off without? Stripping the earth of resources and diminishing its ability to sustain life? Surely not. So where can we stand? The meaning of integrity centers around being sound and whole. Personal integrity calls for aligning our actions with our beliefs so they can form one whole. Integrity of systems requires that all parts function together soundly as a whole. Theologian Walter Wink contends that every human institution has a divine vocation. And the divine vocation of our economy is to provide for livelihood and welfare. Walter Wink is another person that I really love. So he says that so every institution has a divine vocation. He says it's the job of the church, that's us, to discern whether it is living out its divine vocation or whether it has become diseased. And if it has become diseased, it is our job to call the institution back to its divine vocation. So that's one of the ways I like to think about our work. It's like calling our economy back to what it would be if it were rightly ordered, to be meeting the needs of the members of the community. And I just finished that section by saying, the pursuit of integrity in the economic sphere requires us to keep several questions in front of us at once. How can we notice and build on those places that have the ring of truth? As we listen for that tinny sound, how can we face and name uncomfortable truths? And how can we do this both in our personal lives and in our wider communities? So asking those big questions, what is the economy for? What is money for? And I already said economy for meeting basic needs. Money is a placeholder for value, a way to ease our exchanges. And we can think about this in, individually, in our communities, and in larger systems. I want to talk just briefly about individual and community because I think that Quakers are really good at this. I want to spend a little more time on the systems because this is the point where we tend to kind of step back and say, can't understand, never mind, looks like you got it under control, whatever you say, you're the experts. So in terms of our individually thinking about money, we have a great, oh my gosh, our testimony on simplicity is the best. It really helps us think about the idea of what is enough. The idea of not laying up treasures on earth, it's a really challenging one. How can we plan for security in a society that has required us to think just about our own individual gain? We have opportunities around investment. I'm not going to talk, I would love to talk more about investment. If anybody wants to talk about investment, catch me later. But how can we not just avoid bads in our investments, but actually put our treasures into things that we believe in? All kinds of interesting things happening in Quaker communities around economics and money. There's this movement in conferences. I don't actually know if you've done it here, but you might have the pay-as-led idea. This conference costs X amount of money, which would come out to an average of X per person, but we know that people have very different needs. So maybe if people can contribute what they feel like would be a good share for them, we can make this thing work. A different way of thinking about it. I know of communities that have decided as to buy up members' debt and renegotiate it at a lower rate. So that could be like credit card debt or student debt, and then they would get a small return on investment because there would be a lower rate, and that person would be relieved of debt. So communities thinking about that kind of thing. There's growing, interesting conversation about our endowments and where they're invested. I don't know if anybody was at yearly meeting summer sessions, but it looks like, I'm so excited, it looks like we're on the verge of putting our PYM money into investing in our communities rather than just trying to produce that income regardless of where the money is. So there's all kinds of possibilities in our communities to think freshly and boldly about money together. But I want to think about the whole big system. And a question that I would raise is, what if we thought about money as a public utility? What if we thought about money the way we think about energy, the way we think about water? It's something that everybody needs. And that's a pretty big contrast to where our current money supply is managed as a private commodity. Now, a lot of people haven't thought this through, but in reality, most of the money in the world is created when a bank makes a loan, and they put that money on their books, and they give you the check, and then you're going to pay them back with interest. That money has now begun to circulate in a place where there was no money before. So the banks are the ones that are receiving that interest. There's all kinds of problems with that. There's a built-in tendency toward inequality, so the people who have money are getting interest off of loaning it out. The people who don't have money are paying interest on the loans that they take. And we're seeing, I think everybody's seeing that, there's really the widening gap between most of us and the people who are really wealthy. That can't change without a change in the money system or a change in government policy. Oh my God, I would love to talk to you more about that. Taxes, there's a lot that could be said about that. That needing to have more money to pay back the interest is part of what creates the growth economy, which is pushing our economy over the cliff of what the earth can absorb. So it's very closely related to what we're talking about the climate. And then when the money supply is kind of a private commodity, then it's being invested for maximum profit. That's the obvious logical. If you're kind of returning to your shareholders, you're going for profit, you're not necessarily going for community need. So there's some very exciting new conversations, I think they're exciting, about money and the economy. And one of them is in the Green New Deal. I assume that people at least heard that phrase, the Green New Deal. There's 4 pillars of it. I'm not going to get them exactly right. One is providing for everybody's well-being. One is making a transition to a green economy. One is reinvigorating our democracy. And the 4th, as it was originally envisioned by the Green Party, is making our money system public again. Pretty cool, I do think. And I have a batch of handouts over there if anybody would like more information. And then, oh my gosh, the idea of public banking. Has anybody heard of that idea? Mm-hmm. So this idea is that municipalities or states take in people's tax money, right, for public use, right? However, the money ends up sitting in private banks. Oh my gosh, I can't say everything I want to say about this. And then we borrow money from private banks to do our infrastructure projects, and the interest costs about half of the cost of any infrastructure project is interest. That we pay to private banks. Philadelphia, my city, last year paid $174 million in interest to private banks. Well, now, what if we kept that money? What if we set up an institution in Philadelphia that received our taxpayer money and that was able to loan it out at very, very low rates to do our infrastructure and public needs projects, and then the interest would come back to us. It wouldn't kind of get siphoned off to Wall Street. Now, there is one example of a public bank in the US. It's the Bank of North Dakota, celebrating its 100th year this year. And it's useful to note that North Dakota was the only state in the Union that came through the 2008 recession unscathed because their money was at home. They hadn't sent their money off to Wall Street. So, it's an idea that is in motion. I think there's 17 states and cities around the country that are working to create public banks. California is within a governor's signature of moving forward. In Philadelphia, we just got a council person had found money to do a study, which is the next step, and we've been gathering signatures. And it's really fun to gather signatures because you say, hey, do you think we should keep our tax dollars at home, or do you think that they should go to Wall Street? It's an issue. It's a real issue that we could begin to think about democratizing the way our money works, which is really part of democratizing the way our economy works. And then another thing, which is a little bit harder for people to get their minds around, is the idea of sovereign money. What if the government was the creator of the money rather than the private banks? We have the idea that the Federal Reserve is the government, but in reality, it's a consortium of private banks that kind of play a role in relationship to government. But this has happened before. The Reconstruction Finance Corporation in World War II was basically pumped money into the economy, created money by creating work. And so it's a possibility. There's very, very active conversation in Europe about the idea of sovereign money. China has banks that basically can create, can fund infrastructure projects, public money, and they're doing a lot of infrastructure in a lot of different places. So it's a live conversation, and I would just commend it to your attention. And it's so easy for our eyes to glaze over when we think about money. And in reality, there's lots and lots of opportunities to be doing interesting things in our own families, in our communities, in our cities and states. New Jersey, your governor campaigned with a public bank as one of his campaign platforms. So kind of checking out where is your governor on this question. I think he's still listening because I think he's just been waylaid by this and that. And one of the leading public bank folks in the nation lives here in New Jersey, and he would love to visit people and talk about it. And I'd be happy to set up getting in touch with people. So I just wanted to start with one way that I end this book. I'm also happy to sell it to people. We need hope to imagine a new future. And here's a quote that really just has stuck in my mind ever since I first heard it. For many of us, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than a new economic system. It's easier for us to imagine the end of the world than a new economic system. And this is a lethal failure of the imagination. The world needs people who can exercise their imagination muscles, weave new realities from the most insubstantial of threads, be able to say, this is real, even when nobody else around can see it, and to act on that reality. We need to practice stepping with confidence and hope into the unknown. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. Could you tell us about the Kendall Hill Monday night lecture that's coming up in October?
Oh, it's Monday, October 7th at Kendall Hill. There's going, I don't remember the name of it.
Oh, it's a great name.
It's a great name. It's something with,
No, let's try to find it.
it's like hope and, see if you can find it, Ruth, because I can't find it. I know it's Monday evening, October 7th. It's going to be a panel of 3 Quakers and a member of the Sunrise Movement, which is this new youth activist group that's pushed the Green New Deal into public consciousness.
It's hope at the intersection of climate, race, justice, and democracy.
Hope at the
Pretty much covers all the bases
of climate, race, justice, and democracy.
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Paula. Who am I forgetting? Liz, thank you, Liz. That's what happens when you go first. We have a lot of things over on our display there. I just wanted to remind you, you can sign up for the Eco Justice Collaborative, which is a newsletter, which is a monthly e-newsletter. And you can sign up for the e-newsletter version of the Quaker Earth Care Witness newsletter called Befriend New Creation, which it comes out, I think, on a quarterly basis or bi-monthly, I'm not sure. They have great articles too. And remind you that Eco Justice Collaborative has a monthly phone call through PYM, and everybody's encouraged to call in. We have a variety of topics that are related to our mission. Fourth Tuesday, and if you get the e-newsletter, or if you look at the PYM calendar, you can get the Zoom conference link. And it's on the back of our pamphlet. Yeah, be sure to pick up our brochure if you do nothing else. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Question?
Is that second pamphlet that you mentioned, is that a continuation of what Rua started up in New England here in
A Quaker Earth Care Witness? I don't know if that was, that was before my time. She's still involved though. She still represents her area at Quaker Earth Care Women's. Yeah, it's a national and, well, actually international, because Canada is included too, group that is, I think, to make it really short, their mission is to raise up earth care in front of all of us as a spiritual issue.
This was extremely informative information that you shared. Really appreciate it. But I do have a question. Is there a separate group that does animals, like endangered animals? Is that?
You mean within QIM?
Yes.
Not that I'm aware of. But species extinction is a big part of what we're facing today, and it's not just caused by climate change, but climate change and species extinction are linked. Yeah. So the other thing is, we have projects within the Eco-Justice Collaborative right now. That doesn't mean that other people can't join with their own projects. So if your mission were to do something about species extinction, you could become a member of the collaborative and move it forward that way. I just wanted to say one other thing. Liz mentioned community solar in her presentation. Is it all right, Paula, if I say that you could be a source of information about that? Paula gave a wonderful workshop on community solar at Haddonfield meeting not too long ago. And that is something that is already available as an option. Legally, we have the option of doing that in New Jersey, but there's a lot of information that people can get if you're interested in going that way in your community too.
One of the things that came up in that, which applies to every state in the nation, that wherever you live, and the reason we chose Haddonfield is because Haddonfield had made this choice. There's a program called Sol Smart, that's S-O-L, as in sun in Spanish or Latin, and it means you are preparing your local government to be solar ready. It's a series of steps which reviews your ordinances, your permitting process, because in our country, one of the things that keeps people from doing solar is the expense and the complications of all the paperwork. There's a great chart they show of Germany, the costs in Germany and the costs in the United States, and a huge percent of our costs are related to permitting and the whole paperwork process. So SoulSmart works with your local government for free. You get an advisor and a consultant to work with you, and they'll help you do the work so that any of us who wanted to go and say, I'm ready to install solar, then it's not like, oh my God, the red tape was unbelievable, you charged me a fortune. It wouldn't be like that. But in New Jersey, there are only a handful that have done it, and Haddonfield's one of them. That would be another thing to go to your supervisors or council members and say, hey, have you looked into SoulSmart? And Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, of which you are all a part, is also one of the organizations nationwide that helps facilitate this as well.
Thank you. I guess we're done. Thank you all for participating. If you want to join us at lunch to talk about one or more of the different projects that we were talking about, that would be great. I have cards for the drawdown in case you're interested in the drawdown workshop. Thank you.